Great, thank you very much. It's great to be here, and I'll be building on some of the themes that we've heard about this morning. So actually, it follows on very nicely from the speakers that you've heard already. So I'm a clinician and neurologist from the University of Edinburgh, and I'll be talking about a trial focused on a condition called motor neuron disease. So just to start off with a little background about this condition, MND is really one of the most devastating neurodegenerative disorders that we see. It affects people through the adult life course and affects people's weakness in the arms and legs, swallowing and speech difficulties. And in many individuals, there are also problems with memory and thinking. It's actually quite a difficult disease to diagnose. It takes about a year from when people first develop symptoms to when the diagnosis occurs. And thereafter, it's very rapid. So the rapidity of progression means that people unfortunately die within 2 to 3 years on average, and 30% of people die within the first year from diagnosis from respiratory failure. Against that background, we do understand a lot more about the complex multicellular biology that leads to motor neuron disease. But despite that, there's only one treatment that's globally approved, and that's been a drug that's been around for 30 years now. So Riluzole was approved by the FDA in 1995, and it only extends life by 2 to 3 months. And there have been over 130 trials in the last decade that have focused on new treatments for people with motor neuron disease, and they've struggled often from being underpowered, not following enough people up for long enough, and attrition due to side effects of the medicines in a vulnerable population. Another real problem has been that fewer than 10% of people living with this condition have actually taken part in clinical trials. So when we set up to establish this platform trial in 2017, 2018, we understood that there was an urgent need for testing effective therapies, but also increased participation and innovation in clinical trial design. We've heard a lot about platform trials this morning, and this is just to indicate where we sit in the ecosystem of platform trials. They're not that innovative in that the Stampede trial was established in 2005, so 20 years ago now, and this was investigating prostate cancer and has led to a step change in that condition on a number of occasions. The first multi-arm trial for a neurological disease was MS SMART for progressive multiple sclerosis in 2013, and then we launched in 2020. And we've heard a lot about the impact of MAMS trials, multi-arm, multi-stage platform trials in COVID, and the recovery trial launched just shortly after in 2020 as well. And I just wanted to highlight in the last couple of years, there's been a proliferation of trials in neurological disease in particular. So for progressive multiple sclerosis, the Octopus trial, the ACT-PD trial for Parkinson's will be launching next month, and we're planning a trial for Alzheimer's as well. And we've heard about how these platforms are efficient in terms of participant number, cost, speed, and flexibility. And we've heard about how if we were to run a series of conventional two-arm studies, by the time you've identified the drug, tested the drug, it will take a minimum of 4 years to open sites, gather the data, clean the data, report the data for one intervention. And if you were to test 4 drugs in series this way, it will take the best part of 2 decades. And we've heard that there are so many drugs that are coming through that require testing. So this multi-arm, multi-stage adaptive platform is much more efficient. Of course, it requires an army of people to deliver in an effective way, and this is our overall wider UK team. And I just wanted to highlight that it requires people from different disciplines. So we have our patient advisory group, and I'm speaking together today with Bruce Virgo, who's one of our chief patient advisory members, who's been with us since 2018. Neurodegenerative disorder scientists who are important for the drug discovery, stem cell biologists, cancer medicine. We've taken a lot of expertise from cancer drug discovery. We've heard about digital and data science and AI in drug discovery, trial methodologists and statisticians, obviously. And we heard about a step change in how people think about this, and it's different for the funders as well, and thinking about how they fund a project that's not a fixed duration study. We've also heard about how, for particularly vulnerable patient groups, it's important to build in design features that allow decentralization, and Bruce will touch on this more, but we've incorporated a number of methodological approaches that allow decentralization and reduce participant burden. So a worked example, really, we launched in 2020, and at that point we had 2 active treatments compared to a contemporaneous placebo arm. and we're looking at patient functioning, but we have a hard outcome at the end of the trial of survival. So the interim analyses are based on a functional rating scale for this condition, and we're also looking at neurofilament light chain, which is a biomarker. And we have stage interim analyses, and we can make decisions about whether drugs should stop or continue. One efficiency that we've heard about is that we have the infrastructure retained. So when we launched our third drug in 2023, we had a number of sites already open in the UK. We could train them and launch simultaneously for a drug called amantadine. So these are repurposed drugs. Memantine is a drug repurposed from dementia. Has very strong biological evidence for reducing excitotoxicity. Trazodone, a drug from depression, which has, again, a neuroprotective element by reducing stress granule formulation in the cells. We then evolved our drug selection protocols to involve human-based stem cell screening platforms, and amantadine repurposed from Parkinson's had really compelling evidence from reducing the abnormal protein TDP-43 that aggregates in neurons. And then we just this month launched tacrolimus. This is a drug repurposed from transplant medicine, and again with compelling evidence from the stem cell platforms. And stem cell biology has really advanced in the last decade, and we are now able to generate disease-based models based on human cells. So we can generate astrocytes, neurons, so the supporting cells, glia, and we have a number of assays really focused on the abnormal misfolded protein, TDP-43, motor neuron excitotoxicity, astrocyte reactivity, a number of assays that allow rapid robotic throughput and screening of drug libraries of repurposed medicines. So this has become a really a pivotal point for us in terms of screening large numbers of medicines. We heard a lot in the sessions yesterday about AI and based approaches. There's obviously systematic reviews of the literature as well to look at safety, efficacy, and quality of these medicines and other disorders, and emerging animal models as well. And just to highlight this approach, we've used this for our new drug tacrolimus that launched this month. And we heard yesterday that many of these drugs, although they're repurposed, have a number of off-target effects. So we found here that tacrolimus, whilst it's used as an immunosuppressant after kidney or liver transplantation, actually has a number of effects at reducing the abnormal protein aggregation and supporting the astrocytes and microglia in this disease. So we've heard about flexible trial protocols with appendices, and this really does allow us to administer drugs with different routes of administration, different dosing schedules, different monitoring requirements, but having the ability to share placebo data and therefore be more efficient in terms of reaching definitive outcomes sooner. So we launched in 2020, and this was just before the COVID pandemic hit. It was a challenging time, but despite that, because of the nature of this disease, we were approved status to continue as opening sites across the UK. One of the real challenges for motor neuron diseases was that before we launched, there were maybe 4 or 5 academic centres in the UK recruiting to trials for motor neuron disease. So a lot of what we've had to do is build infrastructure and training. And one, we talked about democratizing access for participants to trials. We felt very strongly that people shouldn't have to travel past 2 or 3 different hospital sites to access a trial site. And so we, as previously you've heard from other people, have recruited all the way from the Northern Islands in Scotland, all the way down to the south of England and in all 4 UK nations. So we reported the outcome of the first 2 drugs, which showed a lack of benefit at the second interim analysis. And we heard a lot yesterday about the need to report expeditiously, even for negative results, and the learnings that could come from the platform study. So we understood that we could recruit at pace. This was by far the largest study for people with motor neuron disease in the UK. And it was a clinically heterogeneous population. A criticism of previous trials has been that they have recruited a narrow population of individuals who may be younger or more rapidly progressing to try and get a definitive result. But then how do you extrapolate that to the whole population? So we had generalizable population, and working together with our patient advisory group, attrition was very low. A lot of what we've had to do, I mentioned, is building infrastructure across the country. This is our site delivery team in Edinburgh. We've had to build similar teams across the rest of the UK as well. And you'll hear from Bruce after me talking about how critical the patient advisory group has been. This isn't just a tick box exercise. The patient advisory group has been involved in every level of the study, from sitting on the steering committee to the drug selection process, thinking about routes of administration, side effect profile, reviewing all the complex paperwork and patient-facing documentation, helping with regulatory submissions, being co-applicants on grant submissions and dissemination as well, so when we publish the final results. And just a few examples of how we've adopted approaches for decentralization. We've adopted remote e-consenting, video conferencing-based follow-ups, electronic diary cards, and validating outcome measures to be administered remotely as well. And I think one of the things that can't be understated is for a disorder like motor neuron disease, where it was a very difficult conversation and then really no follow-up afterwards other than symptom management and palliation, this has been a transformation for people living with the condition, and they have fed back to us this sense of hope that comes from participation, and also a sense of altruism and a sense of increased contact with healthcare professionals. A few other things just towards the end that I wanted to focus on as benefits of a platform study. When you're following up large numbers of people in detail with a high degree of clinical characterization, there are other opportunities. And one thing that we've established is a large bioresource, now one of the largest bioresources globally for this condition. And we can collaborate with individuals nationally and globally. And one area that we're working on very hard are biomarkers for diagnosis, biomarkers for disease progression, and ultimately biomarkers for target engagement as well. And there are lots of high sensitivity, high throughput immunoassays that are emerging that will be beneficial. In terms of decentralization, we're very interested in digital approaches, and we've led a Pathfinder project this year in our national cohorts in Scotland. And we can now differentiate between people with motor neuron disease who have speech difficulties and healthy individuals, looking at the acoustic signals from voice. So this isn't looking at transcripts of speech, it's the acoustic signals. And now what we'd like to do is launch this in the trial as a non-invasive scalable biomarker as well. One of the things we heard about in the previous talk was the challenges, though, of repurposed medicines and platform trials. And one of the things we've been considering a lot is when you take a repurposed medicine for a different non-central nervous system indication, there are a number of hurdles that need to be overcome. Does the drug cross the blood-brain barrier? What's the optimal dosing? Do we take the dosing from the primary indication, or is it different for the nervous system? What about different routes of administration? Target engagement in the nervous system, and toxicity and safety in a different patient population that might be more vulnerable. And so you heard before proof of concept studies. We're also very interested in the next few years in thinking about how we might adopt dose ranging studies, CSF measurement of drug levels, thinking about target engagement of biomarkers and safety assessments in a small number of people followed up in detail before these can then be taken through to the platform. Okay, so just to end then in terms of forward momentum, where we are now is we've just launched our 4th intervention. We're protocolizing our 5th intervention at the moment. And again, you've heard throughout the conference the need for combination therapies for these disorders that have multiple pathological pathways. Also thinking about having precision-based biomarkers and embedding experimental approaches as well. I'll stop there and thank the army of people from across the UK, from across many disciplines that have helped us get to where we are now. Thank you very much. Thank you.